Coming up on Plane Crazy Down Under. Air shows are always a great spectacle, but what does it take to coordinate all the action? We catch up with Chris Tibbetts, one of Australia's most experienced air bosses, on the eve of air shows down under Shell Harbour.
You want to try and have something happening in front of the crowd at all times, and more air shows are sort of catering to having something for everyone in the family.
And Grant ventures north to Tocumwal for a sandwich, a soft drink or two, and a chat with local aviation identities Alan Arthur and Matt Henderson.
On landing, you have to have the engine spooled up to at least 80% power to run the air over the flaps. If not, it'll stall.
Tocumwal's one of the longest continually operating aerodromes in Australia at 102 years of continual flying activity here. During the war, it was the largest airbase in the Southern Hemisphere and the largest base ever operated by the Royal Australian Air Force in its 102-year history.
Autumn means air show season, and we can't wait as we get plane crazy.
Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Vischer. Joining me, of course, my good friend Grant McHerron. And mate, as we record this on, strangely enough, the 29th of February, that means autumn's coming and that means it's air show season. Good news, good news.
Oh, it sure is, mate. It sure is. And the formerly Wings over at Illawarra, now air shows down under Shell Harbour, is on actually this weekend as we're recording. So probably last weekend when you get to hear this. But
yeah, well, the magic of radio.
Exactly. But sadly, we can't be there. I was going to go. Steve's working and got family things. I was going to go, and then my car decided, no, you're going to take your entire travel budget and spend it on me.
Well, perfectly reasonable. Grant, your car's a classic.
Well, yeah, RX-7 and the Toyota. Yeah, well, the Toyota's rapidly on the way to becoming a classic.
Yeah, well, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. And, of course, I have my motorcycle these days, and that seems to soak up a lot of my cash. It probably would be cheaper to go flying, or probably not.
Well, I don't know. It's tempting, depending on. Let's just say that given what we've both spent on our respective holes in the ground that move, yeah, could have been.
Well, Grant, obviously putting an air show together is no small endeavour, and if you've ever looked up in the what could be called a control tower or the commentary stand or whatever you'd like to call it, you'll see lots of people up there, and it's not usually just people up there that's describing the air show, but there's all sorts of people, and you may actually notice a guy wearing a reflective vest that says Airboss, and we're going to have a bit of a chat with just one such person today.
That's right, mate. Tibbsy's a good friend. He and I have done a number of air shows together where he's been the airboss and I've been doing commentary. Somewhere we've been on a team of people, but he's still the boss. Others where it's just been him and I standing up there on a tower, or him on his one scissor lift real high and me on a halfway up scissor lift because A, I don't like the wobbling that they do, and B, I sometimes have guests I have to get on to talk with me. But it's been great working with Tibbsy over many years, and we were very fortunate to be able to get him for a chat.
Absolutely, and Tibbsy's the nickname, but the full name, of course, is Chris Tibbetts, and he joins us on the line now. G'day, Tibbsy, how are you?
G'day, fellas. How are you both?
We're good. Well, congratulations on landing the gig again and being an airboss. That's for people who don't know, just give us a brief, high-level overview of what it is you do because, it's a pretty easy job, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, super easy. It's one of the easiest, least stressful jobs I've ever had, I think. A brief overview is the airboss is
we got all day. It's okay.
Airboss is basically responsible for everything that the crowd sees going on in front of them, really. So from the moment the display starts, my role is to keep something happening in front of the crowd as safely and efficiently as possible. So I'll cue different acts. If I can see gaps coming up, I'll change the schedule on the fly if that's possible. Just make sure that everyone walks away safe and everyone's had a fun day and the punters have enjoyed themselves.
Because that's really the role, isn't it, of when you're doing something like that is, yes, there's got to be times where there's nothing in the sky, but for those of us that are into aviation, I mean, we can probably live with that and we understand, but the whole point of an air show is to engage the general public and to keep the excitement level high, so that's the challenge for you.
That's right, yeah, and especially if people have paid their hard money to come see something, like you want to try and have something happening in front of the crowd at all times, and you sort of got to understand that not everybody is as aeroplane mad as we are and the listeners are. So more and more air shows are sort of catering to having something for everyone in the family, whether it's freestyle motocross bikes, markets, rides for the kids, that sort of thing.
So yeah, like us have geeks, we'd be like, 5 aircraft doing aerobatics, one after the other, and a couple of military thrown in. Oh, that's a great air show. But yeah, I suspect the general public, by the time you've had your third small aircraft throwing itself around the sky, they probably want something different, don't they?
Yeah, and part of my role with Shell Harbour, not with every air show, but is putting the program together and just trying to find that balance of the aerobatics and the smoke and whether it's a formation team or a solo, the warbirds and the military displays, and just trying to keep, what's the best way of putting it, just that bit of variety there to keep everybody interested, so nobody gets bored of too much of the one thing.
And there's a lot of planning, of course, that goes in. Obviously, this is not something that we sit down and scratch over a whiteboard a week before. There's a huge amount of planning that goes into this in the months leading up. Yeah, definitely.
I've been working on this for the last couple of months, and also falling back to previous years at the same venue when it was known as Wings Over Illawarra under Mark and Kerry with Bright Events. So I was sort of drawn on a lot of local knowledge and knowing the area and knowing a lot of the operators, so the guys from Haas, Paul Bennet Airshows, and 100 Squadron, all the guys that I've spent time with over the last how many years I've been doing this.
Now, Tibbsy, speaking of previous events and so on, I've been there when you and I have both been stressing about weather. And that's a big factor. I remember last Wings Over Illawarra, the famous rainy Sunday, and still managing to get the F-35 and before it rained. There was so much going on in the background about that, and wet runways in Newcastle that was shortened and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
2 questions. One, how do you handle the variability of the weather and all that stuff? And the other one is, how do you deal with the stress, man?
I don't worry about the stress until the Monday, really. But in terms of the variability, like it's something that's you've always got to have in the back of your mind. You've got to be able to know, well, looking at the forecast from weeks out, have a backup plan. All the guys that we work with throughout Australia are all professional guys, so most of them will have a low plan for bad weather if we do have a lower cloud base. A lot of it comes down to, if we are changing stuff relatively close, is knowing the abilities of the aircraft and the pilots in terms of wet runway. Say, for example, you wouldn't put the Sabre out of Illawarra with a wet runway because it's a risk outweighs the reward. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it really depends. Like I know we'll talk about Illawarra. We've had issues with weather in the past at different times of the year. They've had issues with wind and with rain. We've had other air shows with fog and unseasonal weather everywhere. It's just something like you can call in as many favours as you want, but sometimes the weather doesn't play nice, and it's something we really have to deal with, and knowledge of the participants and the aircraft and the local area, and also knowing when to call it a day and cut it and just say, look, it's not safe. Let's just walk around. I know one event we went to, it was we had quite a lot of rain there, and we actually opened the flight line for the punters so they could get up and around and really, really close to some of the World War II aircraft, and it was really well received. And weather's out of your hands, so you sort of got to make do with the best of them.
I think people understand that too, the general public. I mean, if it's pouring rain or it's really atrocious weather, I'm sure most people would understand that, and that's a strategy that works well if you can at least let people get around aircraft and promote the game, promote what's a passion for us, and hopefully hook a few more.
That's exactly right. And we're very lucky that we get to be up close and around these machines quite a lot more often than the average person does. So to see the looks on people's faces when they're walking right up, to within 2 or 3 foot of a Spitfire that's parked next to a Focke-Wulf and a Kittyhawk and Mustang, and it's I think sometimes I sort of forget how lucky we are in terms of the stuff we surround ourselves with.
I suppose too, like you mentioned too, like working with a lot of operators, one of the things about Australian aviation in our scene here is that it's not that big, which can be disappointing. But I suppose one of the advantages too is that the community is not that big. So, the people that are regularly on the air show circuit, they understand the game, and it's something that everyone understands the safety aspects of it and the planning aspects of it.
Yeah, that's true. And knowing all the different performers, you've got to sort of know which ones, as you get to know them, might need that little bit of an emphasis on timing or just a bit of a reminder that their act's coming up, and then you've got other guys that do quite a lot of air shows that that you don't need to hassle them. They're going to be on top of it, and it just sort of takes the stress away when you've got operators like that out there as well.
Now let's take a bit of a step back. you're not like somebody who's just enthused with aircraft. You actually fly. And how'd you get into aviation? Because I've known that you've been a meat bomber, you're flying tail wheels, you've even got a glorious twin, if you're allowed to talk about that, that's in the hangar. And how'd you get into flying, mate?
I've always had an interest in flying from before I can remember. I don't know if it's my grandfather was a tail gunner in Lancasters in World War II, so there was always that from growing up. There was that picture of the Lancasters in the lounge room. So whether it was that or what, I've got no idea. But I went and got my commercial license, started doing joy flights in Tiger Moths. Did my instructor's rating. Was chief pilot of a skydive operation for quite a few years, and and sort of here I am. That sort of led into the air shows. A mate of mine, Paul, was stepping up and starting to do more and more air shows, so I started ferrying aircraft around for him and looking after the radio. And too many years later, here I am.
And so that little bit you just said, looking after the radio, so. You've done all that. We'll come back to the Beech 18, but because you just said we've done, and I think the first time I met you was when you picked me up in the Cessna 185 at Port Macquarie to go north. Or I think we'd met before then, but that was a classic. Just jump in and hang on. Fortunately, there was another front seat, so I wasn't like sitting in the back where the jumpers normally go. But get on the radios, get on the radios. So talk to me through that. And how that has progressed from just helping out to now becoming, I believe we can say, a certified airboss?
To an extent, yeah. Doing a lot of smaller regional shows. Initially, we obviously needed somebody to work the radios. It was my job to listen to the CTAF, be aware of any inbound aircraft. If any information had to be relayed to the guys that were displaying, I'd do that. Then sort of let the next guys know when to line up, and it sort of progressed to the Ringmaster role, which is required as a display coordinator, what we call in Australia the Ringmaster, through to it being a really defined role now, especially the size of shows. Like in the last 15 years, there's been a lot more shows popping up all around Australia, and I think a lot of that is due to sort of aero clubs putting their hand up, and operators like Paul Bennet Airshows sort of going out there and saying, hey, we can do all the paperwork and do all the scary stuff for you and deal with CASA, and let's get something going for the community.
I suppose overview by CASA is something that we always talk about on this show, regardless of what topic it is. But I mean, really when it comes down to oversight of safety issues, you've really got to work in with them, don't you? There's a lot of consultation that goes backwards and forwards to get those approvals. Yeah,
it is. It's it is quite detailed. Luckily, the majority of guys that do those exemptions and give us the approvals do a lot of shows, so they do see the same names coming up, and in terms of they get to see who the performers are and what the safety aspects are and what the risk assessments are. And because there's a relatively limited number of operators in Australia doing it, I think that makes their job that little bit easier. Whereas if you look at somewhere like the States, there's over 300 air shows throughout the year. I think that would be a lot harder, which is why they introduce things like a SACSO statement of aerobatic competency and that sort of thing. But over here, it's a relatively small, so everyone sort of knows each other, and I think that makes our job and CASA's job easier.
So you just mentioned the US there. They have various I'm calling it certification standards, but it's training and getting checked out before you're allowed to be an airboss. And it was something that came up in the International Council of Airshows, ICAS. And I've been hearing more and more people talk about, you can't do a big air show unless you've got somebody who's been checked out and approved to be an airboss. Is that where Australia's going?
There was a push for it a few years ago. I would say off the top of my head, probably 7 years ago. I don't know. COVID sort of messed up the timing of everything when you sort of think back how long ago stuff was. There was a push for it. And I believe that sort of was knocked back. I don't know the reasons for it. But there was in the past a push for it. And I'd like to see something like that coming to fruition in Australia, because it streamlines everything and makes everything a lot more consistent.
So, okay, we've got Shell Harbour coming up, but last year you were up on the stand airbossing along with Wayne Boggs, who was brought in from the US for the event. And my understanding is you were like the airboss for the Pacific Airshow Gold Coast, and you've also done some work at Miramar and Huntington Beach, perchance.
Yes, I did. So I was asked by the guys at Pacific Airshow. They came out obviously prior to their show and looked at a lot of shows and approached me and asked if I'd be willing to airboss, be part of the team up there, which I sort of jumped at. It was a great opportunity to see some stuff that you wouldn't normally see, but they're sort of taking a different tack in terms of the way they're doing things. And from what I saw there, I think there are a lot of people who have had their eyes open to the fact of what an airshow is, that would never have gone to an airshow before. So however many people were there, there was so many people just asking, "Oh, when's the next airshow we can go to?" It was really, really good. Yeah, so I worked with Wayne Boggs and Ray Shaw, who normally runs the tower at Miramar. He's an airboss as well from the States. And I sort of explained the differences that we have over here compared to what they have. The three of us worked together over the weekend and sort of learned a lot from each other. And I was then presented the opportunity to go over to the States and attend the ICAS Airboss Academy at Miramar Airshow. So I went over and did that, and Ray Shaw was actually airbossing that. So it was run by ICAS, Dan Hollowell, Tooch, and there were people ranging from people who wanted to be an airboss to people who were already certified, just doing their currency. So we spent the weekends mainly in the classroom, but also out on the flight line, looking at stuff, critiquing stuff. And then the following weekend, I was part of the airboss team at Huntington Beach for Pacific Airshow there. So it was a busy couple of weeks.
What sort of numbers did you have in that class? Was there a lot of people that are interested in doing that over there? There's a lot of air shows over there. So
yeah, there was probably 12 to 15 people in our class, Steve. So and that ranged from there was one person who had never done it before that was just interested, through to guys that do some of the big shows across North America. And
we've had that tragic fighter versus bomber crash in the US. Has that raised awareness of the importance of getting all these checkouts and having air bosses who are current, checked out, all that kind of stuff?
It was definitely one of the topics of conversation over there. I'm not sure what the final findings were from that accident, if they have been released. There was a loss of separation. It was definitely something that's been brought up between that and other accidents that have unfortunately happened around the world. But it was a topic of conversation, and ICAS does have a big push across North America and Canada in terms of making sure that people who are in that role are current and know what they're doing, because at the end of the day, you've got people's lives in your hands. So when you make stuff up on the fly or change stuff that wasn't briefed, obviously you bring a lot more risks in than what there would have been prior.
So we've talked about the US and how they have the standards and the assessments and currencies and so on for air bosses, but you also said quite a large number of air shows per year in the US. It's a much bigger market and all that, but are you able to talk about, from what you've seen from ICAS attendance, which we'll talk about later, Miramar and Huntington Beach and so on, and you work with the Americans, how different is their approach to doing air shows to what we get down here?
So in terms of our approach compared to theirs, I'd say there's quite a lot of similarities from what I've seen. So when they're dealing with the FAA and we're dealing with CASA, very, very similar. In terms of our risk assessments is the same. The one thing that I've noticed is there's a bigger ex-military contingent of people. So a lot of the guys who are air bosses or display pilots are ex-military. So that's probably the biggest difference. I know we do have a few guys here that are ex-military, but it's a lot different over there in terms of that. But in terms of the approaching with the paperwork and organising the programs and briefings and all the boring stuff that goes on behind the scenes that most people don't know about it's quite a lot of similarities.
So staying in the US, one last question about the US, and you mentioned it, you were in ICAS in Vegas, and we all know what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But I've been hearing stories about ICAS from various sources. How was it to actually go to that? It's like December, it's huge.
It's pretty intense in terms of time-wise. So we actually got over there a day early and sort of had a bit of a look around town before everyone started rolling in on Sunday. And by the time you get up in the morning, start doing seminars, round table talks, then go to the auditorium for a couple of hours, then more seminars, and then back to the auditorium, and then you've got the networking in the evening. It's so it's a very busy week. But it's eye-opening. Like, you know, some guy from regional Australia to go over there. You know, been lucky enough to be involved in this industry over here for 10 or 12 years, and then to be sitting at the bar with some of the biggest names in air shows in the world, just talking airplanes and shooting the shit, and it was really good. It was definitely worth the trip, but it was very, 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 very busy.
And I like how you said networking. Yes, well said. I think we know those ones.
Yeah, you're right. But mate, no, it was unbelievable. Like the stuff that goes on, around the bar, where you're sitting there and talking to people and and hearing deals being made and ideas getting thrown around and everything. It was it was an eye opener.
Pretty epic.
Now, Tibbsy, time's a little bit against us, but I can't let you go before we talk about the Beech 18. Now, a pretty unique aircraft in its own right, and there's not a lot of them around flying in the world these days. Even rarer to see one here in Australia. Can you tell us a bit about yours and how'd you come to own it?
Well, it was one of those I heard about it on the grapevine and went up and had a look at it, and silly me made an offer and then had to make a phone call to my wife saying I just bought an aeroplane. And so then,
and she didn't kill you,
not yet. So then spent the next few years restoring her.
So where was it? Where was it located?
It was at Murwillumbah. It was still in the US register. It was built for the Canadian Air Force. It's a 1952 3TM Expeditor. After a time with the Canadian Air Force, she was bought by Hamilton Aircraft, and they did all the mods, the cargo mods, so cargo doors, square wingtips, two-piece windscreen, stacked exhaust, walking gear, all the bells and whistles. It was a freighter until it was confiscated for drug running in the early 80s.
Wow.
It was sold at auction. It had been a private aircraft since, and the previous owner flew it across in I think 98 or 99. And then it did some movies and TV work in North Queensland, and then I purchased her.
And I have it on good authority that multiple people, not just you guys, but multiple people have done strip searches on that aircraft looking for anything that may have been left over from its time when it was being used for naughty
there was a bit of white
purposes.
powder. There was a bit of white powder, but it was just aluminium corrosion. So.
Well, you know, I learned to fly not far from Mena, Arkansas, so I've probably seen it before. Well. Anyway, there's a movie reference for you. True story, though. Anyhow. Well, tell us about getting certified to fly it. I mean, how do you go about that? I mean, how do you find someone that can tick you off for that?
Well, I was lucky enough that a mate, everyone knows who Paul Bennet is. It's not type rated, the Beech 18. So as long as you've got tail wheel, retrack and constant speed, you're right. But it can be a bit of a handful for takeoff and landing. You've got those two big engines and two props both turning the same way. So you need a fair bit of rudder on takeoff, but luckily with a dual rudder, once you get that tail up, you get a fair bit of authority. But the problem is on landing, you've got that really deep chord on the wings, 40-degree of flap. So you've just got that little bit of a moment where that tail's dropping and the nose wants to swing, where you've got no rudder authority. So you just got to be aware of that. I was lucky enough that I went up and did some circuits with Paul and just spent some time in it, flying around with the family and just trying to get up in the air as often as I could afford to put fuel in the tanks.
and oil.
Yeah.
And oil, yeah, of course. And that brings me on to my next question, which will be around maintenance. How do you go for maintenance and getting spare parts for it?
You can't just buy a lot of the stuff off the shelf, but there are a couple of good suppliers. Once you dig around, there are some good stockpiles of parts in the States. Two suppliers I've found over there which are quite reliable and really, really good to work with. It's just the freight getting the parts over here is the problem. So as long as you've got deep pockets, everything's possible. So.
Well, Tibbsy, yeah, as long as you got deep pockets or a few lotto wins, I think, when it comes to old aircraft. But, mate, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule. You've come on and had a good chat. Mate, really happy. It's been great watching your progression through from regional air shows to the big ones and now overseas. So if I said I wasn't jealous, I'd be lying. But thank you for taking the time. Steve and I have really enjoyed having this chat with you. So thanks, mate.
Awesome. Thank you very much, fellas. And I'm pretty sure I'll see you both on the circuit soon, eh?
You might think that in the Australian Defence Force you'll only ever have the one job, but take a closer look at how it invests in your career and you'll find training for new roles as well as gain professional, tertiary and trade qualifications.
Learn more at adfcareers.gov.au.
Imagine if you were very sick, feeling so bad you could hardly get out of bed. But you had to get up and drive 600 kilometres to hospital for treatment. You'd be eternally grateful for Angel Flight, whose pilots fly them there free of charge. So please, support the work of Angel Flight or get involved as a volunteer pilot or driver. Log on to angelflight.org.au and help bring relief to people who so desperately need some.
Hi, I'm Dave Homewood from the Wings Over New Zealand show, New Zealand's own aviation podcast series, where we feature the stories of Kiwi pilots, warbird restorers, Air Force veterans, home builders, historians, authors, modellers, stories from aviation museums and associations, airshow reports, and much, much more. The Wings Over New Zealand show loves to bring you the stories of Kiwis who've made their mark on aviation. So find the Wings Over New Zealand show online. Find more about it on the world-famous Wings Over New Zealand Aviation Forum and like us on Facebook. We also love to listen to Steve, Grant and the team at the Plane Crazy Down Under show.
Welcome back, folks. The second part of the show. We have a couple of interviews that I recorded one day up at Tocumwal when I went for a flight in a Cirrus with Evan Schoo, a friend of the show from way back. And Evan and I jumped in the Cirrus and flew up to Toke on an absolutely beautiful clear blue skies day. Went up nice and early, wheels up somewhere around, I think it was pretty close. Well, nice and early, so well in advance of Steve's usual preferred wheels up at midday. So nice through there. Sorry, Steve, had to do it.
Ouch.
But yeah, look, it was a great flight. We clearing a million, but we went up under instrument conditions to so Evan could practice and did an instrument departure out of Moorabbin and the Melbourne area, and then practiced an RPAS arrival at Tocumwal. And we'd just finished parking, shutting down, tying it all down and all that, when the main reason we went up super early arrived overhead. Alan Arthur flew in with his P40, and I hadn't seen Al for years, so we went up a little early because Matt Henderson, who he and his wife run the Drome Cafe and the Heritage Museum on the airport at Tocumwal. And so Matt let us know that if we got in early, we'd be able to see Al arrive and hang out. So we got in early, we hung out, we had brekkie, and I highly recommend it if you're flying past or driving past, or as Al did, making it a mission just to go there for brekkie, then do so. The Drome Cafe, a lot of the locals at Toke come down there for brunch and for coffee and cakes, as you're going to hear, because I recorded a couple of interviews, one with Al about his flying and the P40 and how's it been since last time we caught up on the show, and one with Matt about a brief history of the aerodrome at Tocumwal, which at the time, or in fact, I think historically, has been the RAAF's biggest base ever. And you'll hear more about that in my chat with him.
Alan Arthur, it's been a really long time since we last had the chat here on Plane Crazy Down Under. How have you been?
Very well, Grant. Very well indeed.
Excellent. Well, we're sitting outside the Drome Cafe here at Tocumwal, and we've got the native birds like the magpies and all that around us, so we'll try and get a chat in around their best attempts.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? It's a lovely morning and going to be a hot day. And just jumped in the Kittyhawk this morning to come down for breakfast. So nice to be here.
Now, the Kittyhawk, beautiful aircraft. You've had it for quite a while. You always told me that it was a beautiful gentleman's airplane to fly. So are you having a lot of fun with it still?
Yeah, I'm still enjoying it. Not flying it enough, and certainly this year I said it's got to be flown a bit more. The more you leave them in the shed, the worse they get. So if you want to keep them nice and reliable, fly it a lot more often. And it's getting to the stage where I'm hoping to get the two boys into it, my two boys. They're probably ready, but they just haven't done quite enough Harvard time. So I think that's the next step, that maybe this year we'll get them both in the cockpit. But yeah, I love flying the Kittyhawk.
Do you let many others fly it?
I always maintain the worst guy to ever fly it will be me. But, other guys fly it. Dougie flies it, and Deethy and Scotty and various people.
Yep. No, excellent. And you've only got a single seat in that, haven't you?
Yeah, one seat.
Yeah. Yeah, no joy rides, it's just you having fun.
There's no complication.
Excellent. Now, we were just chatting inside, and you're talking about some staggering information about a beautiful 1930s aircraft. Do you want to chat about that?
Yeah, we're trying to finish off a Staggerwing over in Wanaka. And we're nearly there. It's Joe Drake's old plane, it's BBL, which has got a hell of a history. It's been here, there and everywhere. Very exciting about it. It's been a slow rebuild. It's going into its fourth year now over there. We're hoping that we think that it may be ready for warbirds over Wanaka in Easter, but golly, we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, it's only a couple of months to go.
A couple of months, it's about 6 weeks, I think. So I not positive that it's going to fly there, but we're very close.
Would you be able to at least have it static on the line?
Oh, it'll probably be static, yeah.
How do you fly? Because have you had much time flying the Staggerwings?
No. I've flown Cam Hawley's, who's got one over there. That was the small engine one, and I've flown another D-17 over in Idaho. It's a 985. They say they're quirky. I don't think it's going to be too complicated, touch wood. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be a nice plane to fly. It's just got a 985 up the front, Yep.
And if you're not flying it, in the back's not a bad place to be, is it?
Oh, it's beautiful inside. It's really coming along. You've got leather, and we won't get the timber done over there, but I'm hoping to line it out with walnut, and just a lot of fun, yeah.
It almost sounds like you'd have to go to a yacht builder to get the interior done.
I don't know. We'll find somebody around Albury. There's some pretty good, car timber guys around there. Yeah.
Yeah, the good old car with the panel sides and interiors.
Correct. Yeah.
Anything else that you want to tell us about on the aviation front? Are you having any other adventures or experiences?
Oh, there's plenty of adventures and there's plenty of stories, but we've got a Sukhoi 29 in the shed now, and it's the best aeroplane I've got a share in because I've only got a share. So it's the cheapest thing that I fly it a tiny bit, got 6 or 7 hours in it, and probably it just makes me sick. But the kids love it, and Riley Deeth and Harry Arthur are sort of the flyers, and I saw Deethy off there this morning going for a jolly in it, and so it's a bit of fun. And then we're doing a static restoration of a Starfighter, a 104, and that's starting to look pretty spectacular. And then we've got the PC-9s. Hopefully, we've got to have those flying this year. So we've got 3 of those, and we've got 1 or even 2 ready to go now. Just a bit of paperwork and a bit of mucking around, and they'll be up in the air.
So coming back to the PC-9s shortly, but the F-104 Starfighter, where are you getting the parts from that?
It's a static. It's all complete. Came from the States, and I don't know, I always wanted one. They're extremely beautiful. They're extremely pointy to have a look at, and it's just Kelly Johnson at his best. So I don't know why we've got it, but it's a polished one, and it's starting to look pretty special.
Who hasn't enjoyed building a model or sketching and all that of a Starfighter? I mean, those razor-sharp leading and trailing edges on the wings and tail and everything.
Well, I always laughed at that they had to put covers on the leading edges to stop the guys opening their head up. And when I was doing the tail, I walked into it and fortunately hit hit it where my cap was on, and otherwise I would. So from now on, we have covers on it.
Yeah, they had boots for a reason.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. But it's a great aeroplane. Oh, yeah. The wing is so small. The wing is ridiculously small. You'd wonder, how does this thing fly?
Well, we used to think that the F4 Phantom was proof that a brick with enough power would fly, but clearly it's the F-104.
Oh, exactly. And it built, like you talk like a brick, SH, well, that's what it is. And they're so solid. Yeah, you can jump up and down on that wing. It's amazing.
Wow, you wouldn't think so, looking at the tiny wing and very thin and all that.
Yeah, it's 4 inches. It's 100 mil thick at the base, and tapers out to 50 mil. And then on the outside, it's got this great big drop tank, huge big drop tanks. And you think about those bumping around, it's phenomenal. And the other really cool thing too about it is on landing, you have to have the engine spooled up to at least 80% power to run the air over the flaps to make them fly. If not, it'll stall.
Yeah, it'll just fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
Wow. So circling back to the PC-9s, I've heard the stories from people saying, they're probably thrashed to death and all that, but you are telling me that's not the case.
Oh, look, I don't like that story. That's sort of fighter jocks just got to say something. We've looked at the fatigue times. We'll be flying them under 4G, and the fatigue, the way they work it out is a RAAF fatigue. It's extremely, what would you say, conservative. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a problem, and certainly the guys doing the test flying who were test pilots in them were instructing. They don't have a problem either. So I don't think we got an issue. Fantastic.
So is the intention to have them available for private joyride type of things?
Oh, probably not. We might take people up in them. I don't really do that stuff, but maybe it comes. I haven't even thought of it like that. We'll sell two are for sale, and we'll keep one.
So more for displays at air shows, things like that.
Yeah. Dougie Hamilton's also got two. Mm-hmm. So we might get together with a two-ship, and that would be quite good, I think.
It'd be great to see some PC-9s doing formation aerobatics once again.
Yeah, perhaps. Never know. Yeah, who knows?
Well, Alan Arthur, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get back to the P40 and fly home. It's been great to see you here. And they talk about the $100 hamburger, but I think you blew through $100 just on that first barrel roll as you came over the field.
Oh, well. Yeah, we can afford to do this stuff. So, and the coffee and the bacon and egg sandwich was very nice. So.
Yeah, if you ever got an excuse to come to Toke, come to the Drome Cafe on the airfield. Great place, great people, and the food was, I could attest, fantastic.
I truly back that up.
Alan, thanks so much once again for coming on the show.
No worries, Grant. Thank you.
Matt Henderson, I think last time we were actually together was when you were flying me in the back of the Wirraway from Maitland to Scone.
Which seems like a long time ago now.
It was last year.
Yeah, it was last year. There's been a lot happened since then, I guess.
And we've had you on the show with Dave Homewood and I on Warbird Radio Down Under. So that was a good chat where we talked about where we actually happen to be right now at Tocumwal Airport, at the museum and the cafe. So if you want to get details on all that, go there. But give us, for those who haven't had time to go and listen to that show yet, let us know what's important about this aerodrome and the museum and the cafe, aside from the fact that you're running the latter too.
So the highlight points, Tocumwal's one of the longest continually operating aerodromes in Australia at 102 years of continual flying activity here. During the war, it was the largest airbase in the Southern Hemisphere and the largest base ever operated by the Royal Australian Air Force in its 102-year history. So it's got some very significant history over time, and also very significant wartime history here.
So lots of Liberators, Beaufighters, Mosquitos, and fighters, I guess.
Pretty much. So the in addition to the flying units here, Number 7 Aircraft Depot was based here, and they were the largest of all of the aircraft depots, and they were repairing, maintaining, modifying pretty much everything in the RAAF inventory at the time. So almost everything was flying in, getting maintained and having done stuff to it. In addition to that, we had Number 5 Operational Training Unit here with, they had Beaufighters, Beauforts, Mosquitos and Bostons at the time, doing conversion and operational conversion courses. And then when the Air Force got the B-24s, Tocumwal was selected as the base for the operational training unit for those. 58 of those were based here during the latter part of the war. They also had a small flight of Kittyhawks, 8 or 9 Kittyhawks were here at that time as well as part of a fighter affiliation group, and about a dozen Vengeances that were used for target towing as part of the 7 operational training unit cadre. And then post-war, it basically became the boneyard for the Air Force disposing of everything. So for pretty much from 1946 through to 1960 when the base closed, it was a dumping ground for surplus military aircraft to get scrapped and destroyed, which is all very sad.
Yeah, and buried, as we still seem to do these days.
Yeah, nothing's changed really. It's we thought that stopped with F-111s, but now it's helicopters. Exactly. And who knows what's going to happen with the Hornets that are still hanging around at Williamtown.
Don't make me cry.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my hands on one of those. But
don't blame you. I was just chatting to Alan Arthur before about his PC-9s.
Yep. Yeah, which is pretty exciting. It's it's good that a lot of those were saved, and it'll be good to see them flying in the air again under civil operations. Under the Warbirds banner. And I think, realistically, they're probably the last type that will see, civil, in sort of any sort of scale. We're not going to be flying around in Hornets or F-35s or anything else like that in the future. So I think, the PC-9, kind of like the Parrot and the Windshield, kind of the last iteration of trainers that are going to be viable, modern day warbird things to fly, which... so it'd be good to see, Al's first one flying, and then hopefully pave the way for a few others that are sitting in hangars, in the process of getting airworthied. So.
Which would be wonderful. And speaking of hangars, we're just outside a really big one that is now a museum with some aircraft on static, some displays, and a cafe.
So our Tocumwal Aviation Museum attached to the Drome Cafe. It was supposed to be the other way around. The museum was supposed to be the primary focus, but as you can see through the window at the moment, it's full of townsfolk who just come out here to have coffee and cake and catch up as a social space, which is really good. We never really expected that to happen. We really just expected to be servicing museum customers, but the cafe is kind of taken on a life of its own and become a bit of a hub, which is really, really good. It brings people out to the airport, exposes people to aviation that they might otherwise not get, and it sort of brings the airport into town, so to speak, which is really positive for us. So.
Yeah, it gives people a bit of value for, it's not just this place where people go to play with expensive toys or anything.
Yeah, correct. Although it was, Al and Arthur, flew over to Kittyhawk this morning just to get coffee and a bacon egg roll. Not everyone gets to do that, but it was a bit of a thrill for everyone that was in the cafe at the time, to have a Kittyhawk, fly over the top, park out the front, and then depart again. So.
I suspect it may have brought it definitely brought a few folks who are already out this way over to check out the aircraft.
Yeah, no, and it generally happens, whenever we get visiting aircraft like that, which happens reasonably regularly. It isn't far from town, and generally, if things are in the circuit or around the airport, people hear them and come out to the airport to see what's going on.
Now, looking inside the hangar, I could see your Windshield and your bird dog, and on static. The series is still static at the moment, isn't it?
At the moment, yep. Yeah, until Doug decides what he wants to do with it. We're still fortunate to have all of those aircraft in there. The series obviously a very uniquely Australian aeroplane and very rare. The history between the series and the Wirraway here at Tocumwal's very apt for our display concept. So that's pretty neat. And I think since we last spoke, when we did the podcast, we've got our latest acquisition, which is the Mackie that the Air Force gifted to us back in September, and that's been a great addition to the hangar and the display, sort of as part of the recognition of the Air Force's 20-year history here.
Yep. And you were saying that the front cockpit, it's like I'm 6'1", you're 6'3", and you can see why they had height restrictions back in the day.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's definitely an Italian aeroplane designed for Italians. The front cockpit, the back cockpit not so much because you don't have the canopy bow and stuff in the way, but the front cockpit is very tight if you're a tall person, both in terms of leg length and all the rest of it. It's a very tight little cockpit. The first time I'd never sat in one before until we got ours here, and the first time I sat in it was kind of like how would you get to everything? And I was just sitting there in shorts and a T-shirt. Like, imagine wearing a G-suit and all the other stuff that you're wearing. I don't know how you'd see half the switches or most of the stuff that you're looking at. Like, I couldn't because my knees were covering it all. So, it would have been a very interesting thing to have flown if you're a taller person. So.
Well, having been in some old Italian sports cars, that ticks all the boxes pretty much.
Yeah, pretty similar. Yeah. And of course, there's like old British stuff as well. It's you go from a Tiger Moss to a Stearman of the same era, and a Stearman's kind of like a big Cadillac, and a Tiger Moss, much like the Mackie, is designed for small people.
Yep.
And very tight cockpits. But it's great to have that here. I grew up watching Mackies and Parrots and Windjills and stuff as a kid, so I was pretty excited when we got offered that opportunity to have one in our collection. So.
Speaking of the Parrot, the old CT4, are you going to try and get one of those for the collection?
Maybe not the museum, just my personal one. I do miss having one. We had ours for over 10 years and did a lot of flying in it, and it introduced me into warbirds and airshow flying and that type of thing. So it's, I do miss the opportunity of having one. I love the Windjill and flying that, as well as all the other things I get to fly. But the Parrot was a very simple aeroplane to own and operate as a single person operating, so I do miss them. I'm glad I get to fly with them very regularly and get to have a go every now and then with a sympathetic owner.
Keeping your hand in, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So this is not the only building you're associated with on this aerodrome. You have your hangar where you keep a whole lot of aircraft, I believe. What have you got in there?
At the moment, not much at the moment. So we live on the aerodrome as part of the air park that's here. So we built our hangar here 5 years ago. So we've got, at the moment, my bird dog's in there. The bird dog that's in the museum's a friend of ours. And nothing else at the moment.
You must be loving the space.
It's kind of weird. Up until coming up towards the end of last year, we had a lot of airshow activity down the south end of the world, and so we had Paul Bennet's Avenger and Wirraway down here for a little time after we did shows down here, so they were in my hangar.
You got the Avenger in there?
Yeah, it fits in there quite well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
it is a big hangar.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty big hangar. So we had that. The Windjill and the Wirraway in there at the same time, which took up a lot of room and dropped a lot of oil.
And marked its turf.
Yeah, and so once we sort of took those back home, I swapped the Windjill around, put it in the museum, and the bird dog's in there at the moment all by himself. It gives us a good opportunity to sort of clean things up, and we do have aircraft artefacts in our hangar, which will eventually work into the exhibits for the museum. But they're obviously sizable as well, so they take up a bit of room and take some time and space to get organised to put on display.
Yeah. So you've already mentioned the dream of having another Parrot, the old CT4, but any other aircraft that you're drooling over at the moment that you'd like to have in your hangar? Money and time permitting, of course.
Well, it's a pretty long list normally. It was, I think, like everybody, when the Powerball thing got up to 200 million last week, we're all sitting around going, all right, what would be on the shopping list? And
that's the mistake. Never do your shopping list until you've actually won.
Yeah, no, and apparently you need to buy a ticket too if you want to win that sort of thing.
Oh, that one little detail.
Yeah, and Kaz did buy a ticket and we won $48, but I think that's going to go very far. Yeah. That paid for dinner last night.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, like everybody else in the country.
70%.
Those two people.
What is it, 70% of anything you put into the Australian lotteries, you could just burn.
Yeah, pretty much. There's there's all of the dream aeroplanes that we have sort of growing up as kids looking at World War II stuff. Kittyhawks, Spitfire, Mustang. Any of those would be great to have. Personally, like we saw with Alan this morning, the Kittyhawk, Kittyhawks have got operational training history here, and we're a Type Doors operated out of here, so that'd be cool. This was a peak dumping ground for relatively brand new Mustangs in the late 40s and early 50s, with 170 of them odd parked up in the paddock up here. Things that have got some historical relevance to here are of interest to me. Surprisingly, there wasn't much Spitfire recognition here. Like there was some passing through. The first aeroplane to crash here was a Spitfire, followed by a Tiger Moth the week after. There's not much recorded history or photographic evidence of Spitfires being here, other than travelling through on their way to or from somewhere.
Do you have any new types? Because you're not currently type rated on a P40, P51 or anything like that. Are you trying to build towards that at the moment?
Those sort of things are... you don't get to have a plan for that. As I've found so far, other people have a plan for that. And, like flying the Wirraway or the Avenger, it wasn't something that I aspired to necessarily, or thought if I do these things, I'll get to have an opportunity to fly those things. It was more, the owners of those aircraft are the ones who make the decisions about who fly them. Same with my aeroplanes. Mine aren't as valuable, but they are to me. And so, not everyone just gets to fly them because they've got, the type ratings or the required endorsements or the hours or whatever. It's a package, and I guess I'm fortunate that in Paul's case, he thinks that I'm competent and capable of flying his aeroplane safely and bringing them back again. And that's you can't buy that or build it. No. It's just it's mostly a relationship thing. Would I love to have I fly some of those other aircraft? Absolutely. But absolutely. But there's no expectation that I will. If someone tapped me on the shoulder one day and say, "Hey, would you like to have a go at that?" I'd be like, "Yes." Yeah. What do I need to do to be able to make you feel confident that I can do that and bring your aeroplane back safely?
Usually it's flying a Harvard from the back seat.
There's a lot of different ways around it. The Avengers are a unique aeroplane. There's not many of them in the world flying.
You're flying your house with that.
Effectively, yeah. Whether what that translates to in terms of experience, I don't know, but because a lot of the other guys haven't flown them either. But it's the biggest, heaviest Star Wars aeroplane kicking around, and it's got a lot of discipline involved flying it. And I think that's the biggest thing is the discipline and attitude of flying these aircraft is. And as an aircraft owner and understanding, paying bills when things go wrong or if you stuff up. The bills just get bigger with those aeroplanes. And so the responsibility is greater. And so I think the discipline of that type of flying and doing those types of things obviously carries through. But at the end of the day, someone who owns one of those aeroplanes has to give you the opportunity, and that's the only way these things happen. Unless you go to America and buy your way into one. But I'm not a fan of that way of doing things. It's easy enough to do. You just go over to America, go to Stallion 51, pay $25,000 and you go and fly a Mustang or whatever.
Easy enough once you got the money, but something lotto win.
So it's it's something that you can buy. Whereas the opportunities I've had so far you can't buy. You really have to earn them and demonstrate that you're trustworthy and capable to other people. So it's very personally rewarding to be considered trustworthy and capable enough to be flying some of the aeroplanes that I'm flying now. So.
Having spoken with Simo about flying the Sabre, he said, imagine you've been handed a priceless, one-of-a-kind Ming vase, and now you've been told to juggle it in front of a whole lot of people, some of whom will come and hunt you down and kill you if you break it.
It's and it's kind of one of those things that you're conscious of but not conscious of. Obviously you're not thinking about that while you're doing what you're doing, but the while you're doing what you're doing is you're in your bubble and you're doing your thing. But that stuff's not lost on you, of the privilege that we have of flying these aircraft. And it absolutely is a privilege. I was chatting to, one of the young guys that flies with Haas at the moment who's just got checked out on the Tracker and the Caribou. And I said, I can't imagine in 20 or 30 years' time that any of us will be doing this stuff, not because of our age. I just think the environment will be much more difficult to do it in.
It's getting harder.
Will we have avgas in as we know it today in 30 years' time? Will we have the opportunity to do what we're doing with these aircraft in 30 or 20 or 30 years' time? So I think, we're in a kind of a unique time in history with what we're getting to do at the moment. And so we savour it while we've got it. And if it all stopped tomorrow, I've had a pretty good time.
It was
and
great.
Very grateful for the opportunities. So.
It was great and something to tell the grandkids, but long may it last.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's and I think that's part of the doing that stuff is being conscious of all of that. Is that it is a point in time privilege to be doing this, and it's not for everyone. And as I said, you can't buy a ticket to do it. It's just if you happen to be that person that's been fortunate enough to have a tap on the shoulder and say, hey, would you like to have a fly at that? Then that's a very pretty special thing. So.
Well, Matt, this has been a really great chat. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the Drome, the museum or Toke or anything like that?
I guess, for us, it's the whole purpose of doing what we're doing here was to to raise awareness of Tocumwal's aviation history, military history specifically, because that's my particular interest, but just more broadly. And, as we've seen today, we've got a couple of aircraft here that have flown in just to have coffee and breakfast or lunch.
Like we did.
Just like you did.
We've done that, come up from Melbourne in a Cirrus. Yeah.
And that's uncommon. There's not too many places you can do that sort of thing. So, to be a destination location for, road-based tourists is a positive thing, but also for aviation tourism, that's something that ourselves and the council are very strong with pushing, knowing that that's a market that's not really tapped in Australia.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's. I know to make this, no matter where we're going, if we can, we'll detour via Toke, and whether we're driving or whether we're flying, if there's an opportunity, we'll drop in.
Yeah, and that's, a lot of people have said that. It's like, we're never going to fly past Tocumwal again. It's like, excellent. There's no landing fees, no security. There's fuel available here. Big runways and instrument approaches if you need to do practice instrument approaches. So there's lots of good reasons to come here, and we're not kind of too far from anything, but we generally are on the way to most places.
Yes. And the food and the coffee. I can't talk about the coffee, but those who've had the coffee said it was great, and the food is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. It's kind of one of the goals of ours as well was, not to be a microwave pie and an aero club kind of thing. Not dismissing that, because it does take a lot of effort and resources to do what we're doing. But it's good to be able to offer, something more than that, both to the aviation world, but also, as I said, to guests of the museum.
Yeah, and supporting the local community by hiring some of them to come and work here, as I've been chatting to today.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a good team of staff that work for us. We've got 13 staff that work for us, plus a group of volunteers that look after the museum. It's been a positive thing overall.
Well, Matt Henderson, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there we go, Grant. And if people are interested in heading up there to Tocumwal to have a bit of a look at the aerodrome and have a look at the museum up there, you can check that out before you go at tocumwalaviationmuseum.com.au, and Grant will pop a link to that in the show notes.
I certainly will, and highly recommend it. The museum's great. It's got some of Matt's aircraft plus some static displays, and the Drome Cafe is fantastic. And yeah, highly recommended.
I got to pull you up there, mate. Now I know this is an aviation show, and I know all of that, but the critical question for the Drome Cafe is, how good is their coffee? Because I'm an addict. I need good coffee.
So I had a can of Coke, so I can't really say because I'm not a coffee drinker. But I have it on good authority from Evan, from Al, and from a number of other folks who were there that it's pretty good coffee.
Okay, all right, I'll take your word for it. Well, you know what, Grant? Some guy that I'm sure is so busy he never has any time to drink coffee is this bloke. Here he comes.
Steve.
Yes, mate. He's upgraded.
Yeah, he's upgraded. That did not sound like a push bike.
Yes, I think he's borrowed something from the Jetsons. Grant, I should explain to people who were, not from our generation. The Jetsons was this cartoon. Actually, a cartoon was... No, let's not go down that path, Grant.
Okay. You're going way too far down that rabbit hole.
Young folk can look that up somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, look up the Jetsons cartoon and be prepared to be educated on what life was back in the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
I'm going to cry now.
I know. Oh, God, I miss them. Anyhow. Anyway, Grant, look at this. I have actual printed email here.
Oh, so the guy's still using the Jetsons bike, but he delivers paper. This is awesome.
It's electronic paper, Grant. You should have seen how heavy it was to hook that laptop up and shake it.
Must be one of those new paper screens because, dang, it sounded rustly.
Our regular correspondent, Grant, is Mick, formerly of the Frankston line. Grant, he's been in contact with us both. Mick, I'm sorry I haven't replied to your 2 emails you've sent me recently, mate, but I do read them and they give me great entertainment, so I really do appreciate it. But Grant, he's also been in contact with your good self.
Yes, and we've been emailing back and forth on a couple of things, but the cracker was that he suggested that I should get you up in a hot air balloon just for the audio, and his version of the audio was quite spectacular.
I can imagine. Probably this is a PG-rated podcast.
Yes, but had to do with you clinging on and not opening your eyes and generally being concerned. My response was that the audio would probably definitely not be PG, and would
be just like when we go driving in your car normally.
Yeah, that is a good indicator actually, and I still need to get you in the RX-7.
Yeah. Anyway. I digress.
But no, thanks, Mick. It's always great to hear from you, mate.
Yeah, and of course, contact at playingcrazydownunder.com if anyone would like to get into contact. We always, just because Mick's filling up our inbox doesn't mean that you can't also, and we'd love to hear from our audience. And as always, I always point this out. If you've got story ideas, you've been around your local aero club and you found someone there and you think, gee whiz, they've got a great story, then let us know about it, because we'd love to get in contact and help them tell that story. That's what we really enjoy doing here. And we know from all these decade and a half of experience now, Grant, we know that people like to hear those stories. So, once again, let us know, please. Contact at playingcrazydownunder.com. Now, Grant, a bit of a shout out to another good friend of the show and someone who's a really good bloke besides, who's having a bit of a... he's been quite public about it. That's Stefan Drury. He's having a bit of a rough trot all of a sudden.
He sure is, mate. As per a video he posted yesterday, our time, as we're recording this, on his channel, Stefan is he's got a bit of a brain tumour happening and is going to be going through an operation and so on. So he has grounded himself following consultation with the fine folks at CASA's AvMed group. And yeah, so big shout outs to Stefan. And, mate, all the best. And we'll be here making as much content as we can so that you have plenty to listen to pre and post operation. Hopefully it doesn't make the conditions worse.
Yeah, we don't want to make things even harder for Stefan than things are already going to be. And, going on a journey like this, speaking of someone who's been on a bit of a life-changing journey myself just recently, just stick with it, mate. And Stefan's just a really top bloke. And if you haven't checked out his channel for some reason, Stefan Drury, Grant, we'll pop a link to that in the show notes too. He has made some just really engaging, really entertaining and really educational video content. He's got heaps and heaps of videos, hundreds of them on his websites. And even back in the pandemic time, I think back to when I first probably started watching him a lot, Grant, flying his Cirrus in and out of Melbourne Airport when that was actually quite possible to do because there weren't really a lot of commercial flights coming in and out. And that was actually really compelling video to watch. But he's done heaps of stuff. He's travelled all over the world. He does great travel guides. And, when we talk about people that have really embraced, the concept of new media I think it used to be called, but it's really just, modern media these days. Stefan's one of those guys who's really creates some really wonderful content. So, and notwithstanding that, Grant, he also was gracious enough, probably without his knowledge, to let us hijack his aircraft for our comeback video.
Yeah, there was that little photo that circulated of you and I with the keys and the aircraft behind us looking all very naughty.
Yeah, I think we got all those scratches out, didn't we?
Well, they did buff out, mate. They did buff out, even from plastic.
Yeah, well, I can't help it if there's no steam gauges in a Cirrus. I mean, crikey, I'm an old school Cessna guy.
Yeah, well, I did note that you left smears of your fingerprints all over the glass, so hopefully you wasn't too upset.
What does this do? What does this do? What does
I know, right?
Crikey.
But yeah, all the best, Stefan.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah, Godspeed to you, mate. Good luck. You'll get through this, mate. You'll get through it.
Oh, totally.
Yep. Okay, that's everything we have for you on this week's edition of Playing Crazy Down Under. If you're heading up to Airshows Down Under Shell Harbour, please drop us a line again, contact at playingcrazydownunder.com. We're unable to go, as Grant mentioned, but we'd love to hear about your experiences up there. It really is one of the great Australian air shows, and I'm really happy that it's gone this way with the people from Avalon taking it over and running it. I think that's going to ensure the longevity of that show for many, many years to come. So please let us know. And, of course, Grant, the Tiab Air Show is coming up down here in Victoria, speaking of great little air shows, and we're hoping to be there as well. So, keep an eye out for us. We're only little guys after all.
Yeah, well, mate, I wouldn't call it a great little air show because it's getting bigger and bigger. It's absolutely epic these days. So, very much looking forward to being at that. And I've been in emails with Ryan Emerson. I hope I've pronounced your surname properly, Ryan. But if I haven't, that's another beer I owe you. We were hoping to catch up at Shell Harbour, but it looks like the next opportunity to say hi to him and hopefully catch up with a lot of old friends and new friends will be at Tiab. And that, of course, is on the 10th of March. So if you're listening to this past then, well, expect to have some content coming out about it. If you're listening to it before then, and you can, come on down and look for Steve and I. We'll be wearing the PCDU shirts, I would imagine.
We sure will be, yeah. I'm sure I can still fit into mine, maybe.
Yeah, I can. Hey, it's March on. Soldier on. It's March on, right? March, the month of March. So once again, in memory of my father and in recognition of my niece and the people I work with, I've joined the Soldier On March On Challenge, and I'm not just doing the 96 kilometres in 1 month, which is for the length of the Kokoda Trail. Look that up if you want to know the history of that and why it's important. I've said I'm going to try and get twice the distance of the Kokoda Trail in the month of March. So if you're wondering why I'm not at work, why I'm not appearing on podcasts and doing other things, it's because I'm out walking. But yeah, Soldier On. I highly recommend the March On Challenge.
Fantastic. Grant, you better pop a link to that in the show notes as well. Until we speak to you next time, folks, Steve Fisher on behalf of Grant McHerron wishing you very safe flying, folks. Get out there and enjoy those air shows, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Find show notes for this episode along with our contact details and a full back catalogue of shows at planecrazydownunder.com. Drop us a line anytime with feedback, story suggestions or advertising inquiries. We'd love to hear from you. Title music is You Name It by Brian Simpson. Plane Crazy Down Under is a Southern Skies media production.
Southern Skies Media.